Hello again, gang. This is part 3 of our Chapter 22 lecture series for your textbook, Give Me Liberty by Dr. Eric Foner. This section is entitled Visions of Post-War Freedom. The focus question for this section is what visions of America's post-war role began to emerge during the war? Even before the war was over, some American thinkers began to speculate about new conceptions of America's role in a post-war world. These thinkers included Henry Luce, who was the wealthy publisher of Time magazine, who wrote an essay entitled The American Century, which argued that America must embrace its role as the dominant power in the world, and Americans should spread democracy and freedom around the globe. Also, another one of these was Henry Wallace, who wrote an article entitled The Price of Free World Victory, which in many ways was a response to Luce. And Wallace advocated for this century of the common man, which was marked by international cooperation and a redistribution of economic resources. The government began to incorporate some of these new ideas and philosophies into its own planning. And the National Resources Planning Board put together a policy it called the New Bill of Rights for post-war economic policy. And this New Bill of Rights would expand Social Security and guarantee access to education, healthcare, housing, and jobs. More and more liberals began to rely on government spending for full employment and social welfare, and these plans appear to reflect the theories of John Maynard Keynes, the economist we spoke about in the last lecture series on the Great Depression. Of course, many of these proposals were very liberal, if not outright radical, and they faced a conservative reaction from Congress, which eliminated the NRPB's funding before the war's end. Although funding for the NRPB was rescinded by Congress before the end of the war, FDR did incorporate many of its ideas and proposals into his own proposal for the expansion of government power, which would include the security of full employment in the United States, adequate income for all people, medical care, education, and decent housing. Although this Economic Bill of Rights was not enacted by Congress, it did extend an array of benefits to veterans through the GI Bill of Rights. All in all, most Americans embrace the idea that the government must continue maintaining employment and a high standard of living. As I have said before in these lecture series, for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. And all of these very liberal proposals coming out of the FDR administration during the war were met with an equally strong conservative pushback. There was renewed intellectual respectability at this time given to fears that economic planning represented a threat to liberty. A very influential book was published in this period called The Road to Serfdom by economist Friedrich Hayek that held that planning leads to dictatorship. And this book helped to lay the foundation for the rise of modern conservatism and set up the modern liberal conservative dichotomy that extends even into this modern period today. That does it for part 3 of our Chapter 22 lecture series. As always, study hard, and I'll see you soon.